Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Here.
Mrs. Yedis,
Here.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Okay, if everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Quick formality, if we could have a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening, please.
So
Made.
moved. Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Yedis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the June meeting of the Board of Education at Alexander. I'm going to try to fly through this pretty quickly this evening if we can at all possibly maintain that quickness. We've got a lot on the agenda, so I'd like to turn the room over to Mrs. Douglas to give us an update about next year of what we know at this point. Lindy?
Mark. As Mark's getting the PowerPoint up, I will start off to say that the past 3 months has been a whirlwind for school districts, board members, administrators, teachers, parents. I thank everyone, the parents, the students, the staff, the administration, for all the added time they've put into the past 3 months. It hasn't been easy. Guidance has been very flexible and very liquid. It changes constantly. We are starting to open up the state of Ohio. We are watching the governor very closely. Lots of meetings going on, from county health departments, children's services, to the EMA director of Athens County, clear up to State Department of Education board meetings and having input there. But I think the state is really listening to the parents right now. I think they're listening to the educators, the superintendents, of what we feel is best for next fall. The governor stated within the next 10 days he will give us the direction and the guidance for the school districts. All my administrative staff is on standby. As soon as we have the orders from the governor, we will move forward. Everyone is willing to come in during the month of July to begin rolling out the plan. So what I have in this PowerPoint is, as of today, it's fluid, it may change. Maybe some of these things we don't even address, but we have to wait until we have the direction from the governor. The administration has met through May and June. We took guidance documents we received from Central Ohio ESC and started looking at all the different components to opening up school for next year. The administrative staff came up with 3 plans, and these are tentative plans. We would like to have a working session in July with the board once we're ready to move forward. The first part is Mr. Jeffers with athletics. We're going to talk about that first, because athletics has begun to open up by the governor's direction and by the OHSAA standards and guidelines. So I will let Mr. Jeffers speak on this slide.
Athletics are a little bit tricky because we have different governing bodies that kind of tell us what we can and can't do. First off, we have the governor, who has the governor's guidelines. We also are a member of the Ohio High School Athletic Association, which has their guidelines that specifically mandate what we can and can't do with our school team. we are not in season for sports. So at that point in time, normally the teams would be under what's called a 10-day rule or a restricted practice rule. The Ohio High School Athletic Association has dropped all those this year because of the limited time that coaches have got to work with kids. So they basically eliminated all of their restrictions for non-season activities, which would be workout, team activities, could be a team shootout, all of those things. They've eliminated all of their rules, which moves us into now we're dealing with the governor. We've got a lot of conflicting stuff coming from the state over the last several months, although over the last actual month, we've been very consistent. And the Ohio High School Athletic Association has issued its guidance. It has no governing power to mandate at this point for us because we are not in season. So they can't say you're playing 21 games or 19 games. Your coach has this period or that period. They've dropped all of their summertime rules. But they did pass out what we feel were good guidelines. They've tried to make it so that all the high schools and junior high schools are consistent. And they give us 3 phases of what they recommend. Now those phases only directly apply to the sports that we actually sanction. And that's where the water starts getting muddy. So boys basketball, our Alexander High School team, they're up there working out right now. Okay, the volleyball team, they're working out in the other gym. And they've got workout guidelines that started on the 26th of May. After 2 weeks, we were allowed, louder? After 2 weeks, we were allowed to move to phase 2. Starting next Tuesday, we would be allowed to move to phase 3. Now, what they ask, is that doing its job there? My crowd needs to. So what they want of us to do is obviously we pay attention to our area, how many cases or how serious the COVID virus is in our area. We're fortunate that we are in a very, very, very good location right now compared to most counties. So we've paid very close to that. I've been in constant contact with the health department. Now, to do these things requires a couple things. One, we have to follow within the Ohio governor's guidelines, and secondly, we need approval from our health department that says it's safe to do this. And then thirdly, the administration or even the school board extension would have authority over things that happen at our premises. For example, if someone's daughter wanted to go play in a volleyball tournament somewhere else and it's not a school team, we have no authority. But if our volleyball team, that was a group being coached by our coach, wanted to go play in a tournament, then we would have authority over that. So things get a little bit tricky. There's tons of AAU events. We kind of throw the AAU word out loosely, but certainly they're teams that are made up of multiple schools, kids that go and compete during the summertime in a lot of different things. We really can't govern those sports. We have no governance over them. The one place we can govern them is our facilities. So at that point in time, the hard decisions we have to make, I'm going to back up a little bit. We follow these guidelines. Those have gone really well. I think I just got a text, the first person, every kid gets their fever checked. The first time we've had any kid sent home because they had a fever was today. So we don't know symptoms, but they did have a fever, so they don't get to participate today. The coaches follow the guidelines. They're doing a really good job with that. It is tricky at times. A lot of these kids, they see each other every day, and then they're told to stay 6 foot apart, and they just meander together. At times, it's literally like herding cats, trying to keep them separated and not doing things. But we're also in week 3 now, and these guidelines are starting to loosen a little bit, which does make it a little bit easier. But our coaches are trying really hard, and when we get an issue brought to our attention, we're able to address it. We continue to reevaluate and look at and see what's going on. We've had great turnouts. I mean, maybe the best, maybe ever, as far as our summer participation. These kids want to get out and do things. They're anxious, right, to participate and either get outside and kick a soccer ball or bounce a basketball or so on and so forth. So that is a good thing. but it also makes it a little harder on coaches when you have a few more kids there and you're divided up into certain size groups. Questions about what we're doing with our own teams? Can I put any daylight on that for anyone? Facility's the big thing, because what has happened is, as you know, most of you know, baseball and softball was eliminated and track was eliminated this spring. So those kids didn't get to play their season. All of a sudden, kind of in the last 2 to 3 weeks, a whole bunch of baseball and softball teams have formed. And they're starting to play, okay? Last Friday, a week ago Friday, I think, was the first game at Athens High School facilities. Most places need school facilities to play. So, and that's the tough decision. I know I was in an AD meeting via Zoom or Google or something Wednesday, and different athletic directors were talking about whether their school was going to allow teams to play at their facility. Because we can govern that. We can say we don't want any outside students coming to Alexander to participate. We are going to close that door. That's something that, as an athletic director, I really shouldn't decide that. That's something that the school board is, with the superintendent and principals, need to have some guidance on. And I think that's an important question. I have talked to the health department. They are okay, go play. The governor's guidelines clear back in May, late May, allows that to happen. So we're almost a month into when he said it's okay to play baseball games and softball games. Our kids are going to be playing. They're not on Alexander teams, even though they pretty much are an Alexander team. They're going to be going other places to play. It's just, do we open the door here to let other teams come in? Now, it doesn't just affect our baseball and softball team. When you open that door, it also affects junior high baseball and softball, which we don't sanction, have nothing to do with. It also has to do with Little League baseball and softball. It could have to do with a soccer event.
Little League Soccer, that would be another one.
Yeah, it could be a lot of those things we're kind of opening the door to. To date, with all of the guidelines we have pushed forward to our coaches, we have followed the governor's guidance and OSHA's guidance. 100% as close as we possibly can. Sometimes there's gray areas we try to work through. We've had no issues at all. Certainly, I don't know where everyone else is at. I would like to see us let kids play. The governor says go, OSHA says go. We've had no issues, but I can certainly understand if you folks are, hesitant to do that. We would be bringing other people into our facility. It's really hard to say this team can and that team can't. That bothers me. I feel like it needs to be a blanket policy that applies to everyone evenly rather than us pick who gets to and who doesn't get to. At this time, it would only be outdoor sports. We wouldn't be bringing anyone to the indoor facilities. I think we're probably not quite ready for that, in my opinion. Technically, phase 3, we would be allowed to do that, although I don't even think we're ready for that at this point. And I'm not getting requests for that, so it makes it real easy. When we're not getting requests, we don't have to make that decision yet. But certainly outdoor sports, I feel comfortable with that. We certainly encourage all kids to, this is a parent decision. Parents need to be involved, whether their kids are showing up, participating in these things. We're not trying to be the parents, but for the kids that do feel safe and want to do that and are willing to follow our guidelines, I think we're ready to do that myself. But there again, I don't think that's my decision. So, questions on that I can help with.
Brad, just for public clarification, can you just read what the different phases that you referred to are and what guidelines we're following?
I might paraphrase because they're long.
They are on our website.
Yeah. So, and they're all very easy to find on the Ohio High School Athletic Association. So basically, these phases apply to our teams, our Alexander teams that we sanction and hire coaches for and transport and do all these things, to their workouts. Okay, so if volleyball wants to have a workout, they presently can have 9 kids with 1 coach, so we have to be a group of 10. Okay, now they could use both gyms, and they could have 10 people in one, 10 in another. And they might even be able to divide up if there's clear distance between, and use different sections of the gym depending on what kind of workout they were doing. Okay, So the guideline is no group bigger than 10, okay? Social distancing is always trying to be in place. We're trying to keep kids 6 foot apart at all times when we can. And that was kind of the phase 1 thing,
That's 1 and 2.
okay? So we tried to, any kids that weren't in drills at that time, they recommend masks, okay? They're not mandating it. They're not requiring it. They recommended those, okay? So that's kind of what we've done exactly with the kids, and we also give the coaches some leeway in this. They're bringing their self into this circle, so we're letting coaches use their guidance there as long as it's within these, okay? So some of the coaches are really big on that, and you'll see masks on everybody all the time. Other coaches aren't as much, more the outdoor sports mostly. You won't see as many there, although sometimes you will. So they're following that. So basically those are spacing. Also, they were, to start in phase 1, you were not allowed to share a ball. So kids could bounce the ball, but I can't pass it to you and you back to me, okay? If you were using a ball. We pretty much started with staying even mostly out of the weight room, even though you could. There again, the guidance was you'd have to clean each piece of equipment extensively before a new person went onto it. And we felt like our kids have been inactive so long, push-ups and sit-ups will wear them out. And you don't have to clean anything, right? And we just wanted to get them active in phase 1 and start getting them back into doing things. So we kind of went really slow on that end, so there was not an issue of sharing balls or anything at all. Now, then it goes into some facility cleaning and some other stuff like that, but no shared equipment at all. Phase 2, you were allowed to start shared equipment. So we could pass a volleyball back and forth, okay? Now, when I say this, baseball and softball are completely different guidelines. They've been issued separate guidelines clear back in May that affected baseball and softball only, okay? So this is all the other sports, we'll call them, okay? Volleyball, basketball, soccer, football, those. So when we got to phase 2, there were a few differences. Outside, you could have bigger groups of kids, okay? And indoors, you still had to stay at 10, but you could now share a ball. So now, we can do basketball drills, modified practices. They're not intense, crazy box-out drills where you're sweating on each other. But you are able to actually have a practice. Obviously, when you have a practice, when kids are in the practice, they're not 6 feet apart. You can't play basketball 6 feet apart, okay? But they're in a practice. Now, kids on the sideline, out of the drill, should be, okay? And they try and and that's a tricky one because a lot of the basketball drills, you have lines. When you have lines, it's really hard to keep kids from being closer than 6 feet. So we've had to kind of try to adjust that when we had an issue or two on that. We're like, okay, we had to try to redesign these drills to try to have less lines. So we've worked on that, and coaches have been very receptive. They've tried really hard to stay within the guidelines, and when we get a little bit out of them, we try to get back in them. No complaining at all. Phase 3 is a full practice and even competing or scrimmaging. And we will look at those numbers come out Monday. They backed them off. They used to give us COVID numbers every day. Now we're getting them, I think, once a week,
Yes.
roughly now, which is a good thing.
The COVID numbers will come out every Monday for the state of Ohio.
So unless we say something crazy happened, we will probably allow our teams to go into that. So they will be able to have full practices, contact practices. That doesn't apply to high contact sports, which our only one really is football. So they won't be able to have a full football practice, right? But they're still going to be able to throw a ball. They're going to be able to run drills and do all those things. And then phase 3 indoor, I think, moves up to 50 people in a gathering, which is way more than we're going to need for us. Let me get that one accurate because that does change. Outdoor gatherings went from 10 to 50 in phase 2. And
I have phase 3.
phase 3 goes up to 50 indoors and outdoors. Now also, another thing that we do is if one of our coaches is going to have a basketball workout, every kid comes in, their temperature is checked, they sign in on a sheet, it's recorded, all the symptoms, do you have a cough, have you had fever, have you had, all these things, they're all checked off, and then the kid is able to go and play. So if they have a fever, and we have stations set up so the coaches can easily do that, But today, first kid that had a fever, right? Over 100, I think it's, or 100.2 or something. This kid was like 2 decimals over, so she had to go home today. And we'll continue to check on her and make sure there's no issues there before she's allowed to come back to workouts. So, and we've had literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people showing up for these. So to have one kid with a fever is probably better than we could have hoped for, honestly. So, but we will monitor that, and that's why it's in place. So now we know we need to keep an eye on this child, make sure she's okay, and we will. So, coaches send a copy of those forms to myself. They send a copy to Mr. Raines and to the school nurse every time we have a workout. So we all 3 get a copy of them, and they're required to keep their own file of those as well. And that's important if we would have an issue. We want to know who was in their pod that day, who have they been in contact here at the school. Coaches have done a good job of trying to create the same pods when they can. So if we have the same 20 kids showing up, we're going to keep those 10 there and those 10 there and not mix them too much. Sometimes there is some crossover, but we try to minimize it.
Everyone brings their own water too.
Yes, everyone brings their water. We do have hydration plans if a kid shows up without it, because as you guys know, teenagers don't follow directions very well sometimes. So that each coach has kind of a backup plan of having fresh water available if kids, or if they run out on a hot day. We want to make sure that we do that. But yes, we don't share water fountains or hydration systems at all. No shared water bottles or towels or anything like that. Is that enough expansion on phase 1, 2, 3?
It is, yeah, for me it is.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
I'm fine.
Thank you, Brad.
What are your thoughts on the facilities? Because I know that's a big one, and we have several teams wanting to play, and if they're scheduling some games away. they
And
obviously would like
districts
to
are
schedule
mixed
here.
on it. I mean, I've
Are you
talked,
looking, do we need to vote, or
Are
are
you
you just
asking
wanting
for
an
a vote?
opinion?
That's, whatever,
I think your opinion,
I think that's fine, as long as
But
I
we
have
have
a
your
directive that
support
gives
if
me
we
somewhere
do.
to go with that, just because I don't want to mandate something that's not really my decision when it's involving the facilities. Because these teams really aren't Alexander teams, not even under my umbrella.
Correct.
You know, but that policy will carry over as we get a little farther into summer and start having scrimmages and things like that.
I mean, personally speaking, just as Jay, I'm happy to see these kids getting back to some normalcy. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But I can speak for my own daughter. It's been frustrating that, you know, I go to work every day, and what does Brooke do? Well, she's got the TV, she's got video games. I mean, being outside and being active, there's nothing forcing these kids, and especially my daughter, to do that. So I, for one, am glad to see that we have some opening.
our suggestion was if you have a team coming, that they sign the waiver also.
Yeah, and we do have that waiver in place that the parents are signing, basically kind of limiting they're limiting the liability of the school if their kid unfortunately contracts COVID. I will say this, that whatever we do, we're going to be under the microscope from the community. So anything that we do, we're going to be under the microscope. And I think opening up sports right now is the guinea pig. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Well, we don't know unless we try. Again, this is just Jay's opinion, but if we're mindful that we're telling people we're following the Ohio High School Athletic Association's recommendations as gospel, so to speak. I mean, we are telling people that we are following these, even though they're not authoritative, we're kind of telling them we're following them as they are.
Absolutely.
And make that clear to the coaches. And maybe do some spot checking now and then, but yeah, if I'm fine with opening the facilities up. As outdoor, yes, outdoor, yeah, we're not there for indoor yet.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we wait till after June 30th and see what the new guidelines are coming out for indoor.
Again, this is just me. I welcome everyone else to please.
I fully go along with opening up, and especially your youth sports. Are you making those folks aware of the guidelines you're following at the school and that they should follow the same guidelines? even though you don't have any
Yeah.
authority over
I have
them?
almost no interaction even with them. Like,
Okay.
often I won't even know who they are.
Youth
Okay.
Sports
Because they
has
just
not
have no-
contacted
yeah,
us yet.
Because we had no contact with them. We don't even know who
They
kid they
will.
have signed
But,
up.
but given that microscope, we will know if they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me,
Oh, no,
we will
absolutely.
get word if
Yeah,
they're,
absolutely. And that's where it gets tough when we open up, because, you know, if the basketball coach doesn't follow a directive, I can very easily go say, hey, we got a problem. We need to adjust this. When Little League Baseball doesn't,
No, you won't have any,
there's nothing I can even really do, other than we can say, sorry, you can't use the
other
facility.
than you're not gonna use the field.
Yes,
Yeah.
Right.
which we can do, right?
and I think they should sign the waiver.
It certainly doesn't hurt, right?
No,
Usually I get an email from Little League Soccer when they're getting ready to start up the season, and we can address it then. Brian, Dan, and I are in and out of here constantly, and Brad is. If we see someone on a field, we usually cruise down and, you know, just scope it out and see why they're there and what are they looking to do. And I'm sure after this board meeting, we will start getting phone calls about Little League. And, you know, can we open up and,
And any of those can be sent to me too, and I can forward them all those guidelines, because even signing a waiver, there's a form of seriousness to that. That
Yeah.
hopefully helps them say, okay, we need to take this serious too, so.
I guess I like Fred's, I like your suggestion is if, for the youth sports that we don't have control over, make them sign the waiver and let them know that we expect them to follow.
We also have a
OHSA.
waiver for organizations,
Okay.
which help as well,
Yeah.
because sometimes, you know, that helps us if there's an organization who wanted to use the facility. SWAT is an example of that, that SWAT softball team. So their organization signs a waiver as well, which lets them know we do have guidelines and they need to abide by them.
well, I think there's a fine line area in that waiver or no waiver, we can be sued. You know that before it even starts. But number two, we provide the only recreational facilities
for our,
within our community. And my feeling is, as long as it's done safely, those facilities belong to the community. That's what they were built for. The Little League fields, the soccer fields were built with volunteers, with the full understanding it became school property, anything we put on it. The only thing we try to control, if we've got a backstop that's unsafe, they need to get it safe or it needs to be taken down. But as far as they maintain those fields, and so they should have some input. I mean, there again, it's their choice if their kids participate, but I think they ought to be given the opportunity and
Lucy?
Yes, as long as they're following the same rules. And it would be good for you to be in more contact with anyone who uses our facilities. Is there any, it's outside sports, so the answer could be no, but is there any reason why we should know if any player contacts COVID? They're outside, they're not touching,
Yeah.
I mean, they
Well,
might use our porta potties or our bathrooms, and we'll have extra cleaning expenses.
If it's our
with
kids,
that.
we would know for sure.
Yeah, no, but the other
But
kids,
other
do we
ones
need to?
I think a little bit, it falls under who is,
If you
Orchestrating these things,
contract
so-
COVID,
Well, they wouldn't know where it is, but in terms of
right, but if you
tracing-
get COVID and you come up positive,
Mhm.
that is sent to the Athens County Health Department.
And they do the tracing.
They do the tracing.
And that's the
And they
reason for
will
our sign-in
notify
forms,
every
though, too.
person. Yeah.
Okay,
so our sign-in forms are for tracing. Now, there again, what Little League Baseball does on really, it's almost their fields.
and they'll be
Yes.
outside, so they really won't, the only thing they would touch would be our bathroom facilities,
Yeah.
which will be, we'll just have to clean them more.
Correct, and we're trying to come up with good plans for that, and they're in the dugouts.
A lot of
bit
teams
too,
are not
but-
using the dugouts. They're
They're not?
staying out
Okay.
of them. Yep, they're hanging their equipment on the chain link fence.
Okay,
Each child has a pole, and they're trying to stay out of the dugouts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's important to support the kids. I'm glad, and the parents, believe me, as a parent, I'm glad my kid is out there.
I think the tracing is important if we do have a case, and I think we have some pretty good documentation, which should really help us with that.
Is there any information on how people are handling spectators? Are they filling out the forms?
Okay,
Spectators, are they filling out?
spectators.
waiver forms?
I
There
don't,
is guidance
Assigned
in
to
OSHA's
them.
documents on spectators, and more so when it comes to spectators, we're pretty much talking about baseball and softball, which doesn't come under technically our umbrella, but it would if you let them use our facility. And DeWine has a specific guideline on that. Let me just pull to it here, because I think I have it here. Bear with me 1 second.
While he's looking for that, somebody probably asked, will these guidelines apply to other activities like band, choir, drama club?
what I've done, and that has come up because we have, FFA is getting ready to do animal judging. And I've had a couple teachers call with different activities. My statement is you follow these guidelines right here also. You do the wellness check, you take the temperatures, you sanitize the room, you practice safety and social distancing. Any questions, you need to come and talk to me or Mr. Raines. So we are following the same guidelines. That it may not be sports, but we have all these other clubs that are amping up, or ready to start meeting, and how do we do that efficiently? Yeah.
Okay, I'll bounce back to Mr. Regan's question. So the state's guidelines, this is coming from the governor, under spectators, and this is specifically baseball, softball guidelines that was put out in late May. And it says spectators must adhere to 6-foot social distancing practices. This includes in and around bleachers for anyone not in the same family. Must conduct daily symptom assessment, self-evaluation. Anyone experiencing symptoms should stay home. Must not enter player area, so they have to stay off the field. Keep 6 foot or more distance from the backstop. So that's the governor's guidelines. There again, how do you enforce some of these things? They're kind of self-enforced. If Johnny and Joe show up to play a baseball game that we may not even know is happening, because it isn't affiliated with us. So I think, we're fortunate with baseball and softball that we have the people that are coaching those sports. First off, I'm going to assume we are not going to let Warren play Athens at Alexander. Right? We would be an Athens team playing someone. So our head baseball coach is coaching this team in the summertime. So he is helping with mandating or moderating these guidelines as best you can. When you're coaching a game, though, if you see 2 people standing in the outfield, you can't go up and say, "Hey, do you guys live together?" At some point in time, people just have to kind of take on that responsibility themselves, and hopefully, they're doing that. But that's the guidelines that are given down from the state. The only thing we have on spectators, and there again, it would only apply to baseball, softball, because those are the only sports that have the green light to play games. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
We'll probably need to start thinking about indoor rules for spectators fairly soon.
And I think we hold tight with what we're doing till June 30th. Once we have the new orders from the governor and Ohio Department of Health, then we meet and come up with that.
Most of what we would have are first indoor events for sports. Most of those, we don't need to have spectators. Because we could be talking about a summer volleyball game. Parents might have to stay home on that one. They're going to ride with the coaches. So we may not even have to deal with that, but certainly we have to be thinking about it and starting to process through the options, looking and seeing what other people's doing, which is what I try to do in my AD Zoom meetings, trying to get input. What is everyone else doing? Not that they're right or wrong, but at least gives us some kind of a scale.
Well,
Hey,
you
Brad,
got
can you clarify something for me, please?
I will try.
If I caught it all correctly, it sounds like we're getting new guidelines come basically July 1, right?
Yes.
And that presumably should tell us what it looks like back on the spectator idea. That should probably tell us what we're going to be allowed to do fan-wise and gathering-wise for our outdoor events, right?
For the fall, Josh, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
I don't think we're gonna get anything till then, yes, and it sounds like then we may get something, of course, in the phases we're in, things could change pretty quick, but I would think, yes, I think July 1, we're gonna start getting some guidance on what we may or may not be able to do.
Okay. And you mentioned that phase 3 for us begins come next Tuesday?
Possibly. We
That's
have
for-
not made that
yes, That's the
decision.
team, we cannot start phase 3 until Tuesday if the health department says go and
Okay.
everyone else says go now. And that would only be for the teams that we actually control. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well? It's a little confusing.
It does. I'm wondering that time, let's say we get to go ahead on Tuesday and then we get the guidelines on July 1 or after. What do we do in that meantime for, or what's your opinion that we do in that meantime where we have kids that are able to get into full-on practices and even into scrimmages? And then we have presumably teams coming to do these scrimmages and presumably have people that come along with them. What's your opinion we do in that downtime in between receiving to go ahead to get into that and the actual guidelines for what fall's gonna look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, right now, I think the good thing is, we don't have anyone chomping at the bit to actually have anyone coming in. So I don't think we're gonna have to decide Tuesday, even if we would say things look good, we can have full-scale practices. I don't think any of our coaches are pushing at all to go to a shootout or have someone come in and scrimmage. So
If we're that close to June 30th, Brad and I have talked, we're gonna look at COVID numbers on Monday afternoon, we're going to evaluate it. We may just decide to hold tight and stay in phase 2 till June 30th.
Right.
Or if there's no rise and it's flatlined, then we'll talk about possible games, but like Brad said,
yeah, and I think
nobody's
even if we-
itching to do
If we
it.
would open up soon for some scrimmages, certainly if anything is indoors and we're allowed to do that, I don't see the need for spectators there. That's more for coaches and kids right off the bat. I think certainly at the beginning of those phases maybe, but I don't think we're gonna be pushing this first chance we have. I don't see any of our coaches pushing for that, and I certainly am not. So I think we definitely can just slow down, even though we may go to phase 3, where there are gonna be inter-squad scrimmages, rather than bringing someone else in. So kids can play one-on-one basketball, or 3-on-3, or 5-on-5, but we won't be going to Warren, or having someone else come in here and have a scrimmage, and our coaches aren't asking for that right now. So I don't think we need to rush on it, but certainly we need to be thinking about different options for sure. Does that help at all? I know that's not a black and white answer.
No, it does. I kind of expected that that's probably what we'd hear, but no, that helps to know that you're on the same page.
Our coaches are just thankful to be able to get the kids in the gym. They're not trying to push the envelope on us. They're not trying to, the only thing that's getting pushed a little bit is the baseball, softball thing, because all the other schools are playing now and our kids want to play too. You know, but that's the only one that really is letting our kids use our baseball field and play games against other people. Because there are some schools, Federal Hockey is an example, as of Wednesday, they were not letting teams come to them. So their coach wants to play, well, we can't play Federal Hockey unless they come here. So it does open up for our kids some more opportunities to play other people if we allow them to come here and play.
So if I can summarize, it sounds like the majority or all of us really are on board with opening up the facilities for use.
Outside.
Just make sure that they follow the Ohio High School Athletic Association's guidance as gospel, I guess,
Okay.
for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
And the waivers are in place. Is that fair with what we,
I'm fine with it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
And Lindy, help me with that too, because you get anyone wanting to know, like junior high baseball and softball, I don't see or hear from. So if I can help them get the waivers in their hands or anything, I know often you can just email those to them as well.
Yeah.
So we can help with that, but,
And it comes down to communication, keeping that line open, and as I get requests, I get a hold of Brad and.
yeah, if we could just stress to the coaches and the children themselves, or our kids, that, you know, yeah, this is not the most convenient thing. It's what we're living with now, but if just one of the children come down with an actual COVID case, their team is gonna be shut down for minimum 2 weeks. I mean, they could be in the middle of their season and they're done. So if we can at least just try to instill in the coaches and the teams to do their best to follow those guidelines,
I think that's really sound advice. In the way we've been expressing is you guys as coaches doing a really good job, get you to phase 2, right? Or doing a really good job, we'll get you to phase 3, or keep you playing. So,
Because that's what they want to do. The coaches want to coach, the
Yes.
players want to play.
yeah,
But as soon as we have one COVID case,
the game changes.
at least the team gets shut down, if not the whole school. I mean,
We
we
brought that up
have
at
to be
day
careful.
one. We brought that up. We said, listen, one case, we're back at ground zero.
Yeah.
You've got to take this
So
seriously.
it-
At
it's
some
worth
point in time,
repeating.
We have to
Yes.
assume we'll probably get one. We've probably been very fortunate not to at this point. So, but yeah. Any other questions from anyone on any of that I can help with? Okay.
Thanks,
thank you all for
Brad.
your time.
Okay, now slide 3.
Yeah. Let me see. So the administration, we've been together a lot through the month of May and part of June. We sat down with some guidance that we received from Central Ohio ESC and superintendent meetings, and we began to plan for next year, knowing that the plan could go in the trash can August 1st, depending on the governor. But we prepared for the worst, and we're hoping for the best. With what we know from the legislature and ODE and the governor, we came up with 2 options. We have a third option, and that's where if there is an outbreak and we end up back home, everybody, then we are preparing for distance learning for everyone. But our first option, which I think majority of the parents want, we will have a survey going out at the end of this week, surveying parents. We are hoping to return to school Monday through Friday. Parents would sign a waiver, understanding the risks of COVID. Parents have the choice to send their child to school, or they can choose distance learning through Alexander local schools. We know we have parents and community members on both ends of the spectrum concerning COVID. So our goal is to educate all the students of Alexander, whether they want to come to the school, brick and mortar, or learn from home. A lot of our purchasing this summer is preparing for online digital learning. Option 2, there is a lot of talk right now at the state that there may be a recommendation that we limit the amount of students in the classrooms. And there is a possible recommendation that we limit students on a school bus. Conversations that I've had with a lot of the board members is busing, the restrictions on busing will probably determine which option we go with. If I am told I can only have 1 child to a seat on the bus, I can only bring in 24 kids at a time. That's going to limit how many kids I can get to the building. Option 2, if we have to limit the amount of students in the building, Group 1, A to L, would come all day Tuesday and Wednesday, pre-K-12. Group 2, M to Z, would come Thursday and Friday, all day. The days they are not in school, they would have Chromebooks, online learning modules, and homework to do at home. Students would not report on Mondays. That would be a day for teachers only and all staff reporting to the building. Teachers would use Monday to prepare lesson plans, online modules. They will be in their classrooms answering questions from parents, taking phone calls from students and parents at that time. We do have a lot of online learning programs that Alexander does have. Edison Learning is classes you can take from grades 6 through 12. They're all online modules. They come fully equipped. You can download those with your Chromebook. Wi-Fi is a problem for our district, but we're better with our Wi-Fi now than we were 3 months ago. We are wiring 5 school buses with Wi-Fi service. Students will have access to Wi-Fi on those buses coming and going from school. And then if we would like to place those buses throughout our communities, mainly where our food pickup and drop-offs are, students will be able to go there and log into the Wi-Fi. Mark has also wired the outside of our school building for Wi-Fi. So if you don't have Wi-Fi at home, you can pull in our front parking lot, and with your school Chromebook, you can log on and access the internet and all your lessons. You can download items and then take them home and work on them. Recommendations, I've been on a lot of Zoom and Microsoft meetings with state representatives, congressmen, Ohio Department of Education, superintendents, lots of meetings. And the recommendations that we're trying to push for Southern Ohio and the Appalachia area, we have 172 square miles to cover. If I can only bring 24 kids on a bus in at a time, if I bring all the kids, I'm going to have to double and triple route. That's going to cost the district more money. So that's something we're looking at. We're waiting for the guidance from the state. We have requested at the state level that please allow at least one child to a seat and families can sit together. That way we can get more kids in, coming back and forth. A couple things that we do know, they are talking about limiting the number of students in the building. They are also talking about social distancing for schools. Children must remain 6 feet apart. They must eat their lunches in the classroom. Recess will be restricted, and no field trips. Now, all those could change, but that's what they're talking at the state level. Masks are a huge issue. Some parents say yes to the masks, others say no. It seems to be a very big topic. The parents that were in the meeting at Ohio Department of Education, they are strongly urging no masks and let our kids come back 5 days a week. Let it be a parent's choice. We are working on temperature checks. Right now, it looks like we will have to take the child's temperature before they get on the bus. We will buy the red laser thermometers. Every bus driver will have one, and they will scan each child before they get on the bus. We don't have the details worked out. But that is what is being put in front of us right now. These decisions, right now we are still under the emergency order of the Ohio Department of Health, and they are in control. So until something happens, we follow that order until June 30th. Topics that we've talked about, we will follow the guidance of Ohio Department of Health, the governor, and the Athens County Local Health Department. There is a big push in Ohio. We've always been locally driven with school districts in Ohio. There is a push at the state level that let this be a local decision. Let the school districts work with the county health departments to determine the plan for opening schools. Those conversations have already started. All the Athens County superintendents are Zooming with the Athens County Health Department, the Athens County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Athens County Children's Services. So a lot of agencies and the superintendents are keeping the communication open, and we know we're in this together. We've talked about sanitizing buses. They will be clean swept every day. They will be sprayed down with our sanitizer, Oxivir. Brian and Dan are working on that plan. We are researching all the recommendations and options that are out there for school districts. We are being told we will need a quarantine room. So we've picked 2 rooms, one at the clinic and one at the high school, near the high school office. For people who come down with symptoms of COVID, they will be quarantined until their parents can come get them. We have purchased 2 industrial sprayers for sanitizing. They were about $3,000 a piece, and we can use those to sanitize the buses, the weight room, the whole entire facilities. Our thought is if we bring the same group of kids in on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, then Wednesday night when the students leave, that's our deep sanitation time to really clean the whole facility before group 2 comes in on Thursday. We have purchased additional thermometers. We are waiting for guidance from the state to purchase more because we don't want to purchase all this equipment and then we don't use it. So we've got items on a list we're looking at, and once the guidelines come out, we can start working on that. We have log sheets created for visitors that come to the building, and one guidance item is visitors will be limited in the school buildings. We are to limit how many people come in. This is a work in progress under the emergency order of the governor and Ohio Department of Health. Administration will be coming back early to help roll out the 2021 school year. We will continue to work on this program. Concerns, I'm hearing, busing is a huge concern. Another concern is, what do we do if we're in another shutdown? If we end up with an outbreak in Athens County, possibly a 2-week shutdown. Accessibility to broadband, that has been a huge push at the state level, that Wi-Fi and broadband need to become a utility, not a luxury anymore. It needs to become a utility where everyone has access. The school board, we've put on the agenda tonight to purchase Chromebooks for K-12, so we can be ready if we have to go back to online learning 100%, or if we do a blended learning model. Oxyvir is the recommended and improved cleaner from the CDC and Health Department. Brian's on top of that. Items we're working on, Mark is looking at UV wands that can sanitize surfaces, Chromebooks, tablets. We are looking at sterilizing cabinets for Chromebooks also with UV lighting. We've added some additional water bottle fillers to our water fountains. We are assuming we're not going to be able to use water fountains. We'll have to have other sources of water. 5 buses are wired with Wi-Fi. PPE items that we're looking at, gloves, masks, cleaning supplies, and what the expectations will be, and the latest guidance from the CDC. Distance and blended learning models, we have filed with the state of Ohio, and we've gotten our confirmation, we're good to go there. We have until November to send in the final documents. Majority of your districts are filing for a blended learning model. That is where students can learn online. They can Zoom in the classroom with their teachers of Alexander. They can join their classrooms via video during the day with their Alexander teachers and participate. We also have the online learning modules, and we have accelerated reader, accelerated math, Dibbles, Study Island, and several other online components. Any questions? I think the biggest thing is we do not know what next fall brings, but we are lining ourselves up to accommodate the parents on the way they choose for their children to get their academics and learning.
Are there any online questions?
Yes. So the first question was, will the kid be required to wear masks?
I do not know yet.
Second one, has it been considered that the CDC, State Health Department, has recommended masks? It seems that it's not mandatory, children not comply. Similar question.
Okay, yes. And I think masks, we just wait for the guideline of the state. I'm hearing more that the parents do not want that mandated. They want that to be a parent option.
And when you say you're hearing that from the state level, not from within our district. Is that a fair statement?
I'm hearing
Or
it
both?
in both levels,
Both?
yes. And I know at the state level, the Department of Education meeting, the parents that participated were very strongly suggesting, let it be our choice, but we want the doors open 5 days a week. So, and they talked about their frustrations of being home with 3 months, trying to educate their child, trying to work from home at the same time. And that whether it was online learning or packets, the parents really struggled through that statewide.
Okay.
Someone
Is there
else?
any version that you're hearing that has the everybody in the pool model, meaning everything back to normal? Is there any version of that that's realistic at this point?
I really think the governor and Department of Health are watching the COVID numbers, but I am hearing that open the doors and let it be a parent's choice. So there is a strong push for that.
Which then means we have a serious decision or difficulty when doors are open and everybody's coming in, if we're held to a limitation of how many people we can have or how many we can even manage to keep distance, for example, right? Pick and choose.
We have to go by the state guideline. If they say limit your population, then it's not going to be everyone can come 5 days a week. No. That option one will be gone if they limit the population inside the building.
What about special accommodation for kids on IEPs and other plans like that, or have ADD, ADHD?
We are looking at that, and we are waiting for guidance from the state. I think we can dig deeper into that in July when we have the administrative team meet with the board.
And what about preschool?
Preschool, our preschools are run under the Athens Meg's Educational Service Center, and currently they're limiting preschools to 9 children per classroom. But once again, we're waiting for the guidance from the governor.
And is there any way to have kids in school, if we have to do half the kids here at any one time, to get kids in school that 5th day? So that if it's A through M for 2 days a week and N through Z, to be able to have alternating weeks. I mean, some days we only have 4 days of school, but what if couldn't we alternate A through M the first Wednesday or the first Monday and vice versa? It'd be really good to get as many kids in school as possible.
Sure, and what we can talk about that, but our option 2 that we have, that was set up so parents know exactly what days their kids will be in school and not flipping it back and forth. So if they know their name is A to L, they know they need to start planning for something Thursday, Friday, Monday.
But we could look at the calendar and we could say in September we have 4 extra weekdays. 2 days it's this group of students, 2 days it's that group of students. We could plan ahead.
Sure.
If I were a parent and I had to pay 20% less childcare, I'd like that. But I don't know the needs of the teachers,
Right.
if they need that day of lesson planning or things like that.
I think right now the teachers are learning a whole new way of teaching. And they're taking on the whole digital component. And that is going to take time to put together and have it well done. And having Mark going down to their classrooms, assisting them with technology. You're talking about recording lessons on Monday. You're talking about uploading them to the website and making them accessible for students. So rolling into the fall, my recommendation is you give your teachers Monday.
And do we have anyone helping them learn about the tricks of doing a presentation for 40 minutes that kids will stay listening?
Teachers are participating in professional development through May and June, and Mark and Megan have online or classes they're holding coming the rest of this month and possibly July. So they have opportunities to come and be trained.
I would like to stress, and I know I'm going to just be a broken record to what Lindy just said, but until we get the guidance, everything that was on that presentation is speculation. We want to at least give the public some idea of what the superintendent is hearing at the state level. I personally haven't heard a word. Everything that I've heard has come through the superintendent from the state. So to say that, I've heard anything different, I haven't. And I've mentioned this at past board meetings, this playing field changes weekly, sometimes daily. So for anyone at home that their ears perked up and they thought that one of these proposals is going to be a severe hardship for you and the family, just wait, because we do not know what path we're going to take. I think you said they're going to issue that next week, hopefully.
They're saying 10 days.
What they said is within the next 10 days. So
So
we're
check-
hoping next week. but-
check your news feeds, because I'm sure it will be widely reported what the state recommends that we do next year.
Now, Governor DeWine is speaking Thursday, Channel 10 News, concerning education. Might come up, I don't know yet.
Okay.
But he will. And I was amazed when I sat in on the Ohio Department of Education Board meeting, because it was really nice to hear what the state was thinking, what families were going through, and the hardships that this has put on families. And it was nice to hear that it's not just our community, it's throughout the state.
So hopefully next week or 2 weeks from now, we'll have a little bit more concrete information and guidance on what the fall looks like. But at least for now, those are the three options
Yeah.
that probably have the most possibility of being in play.
Now, I listened to West Virginia, and they're going with a modified schedule. No one's coming back 100%. That kind of alarmed me, because I know the Midwestern states are working together. But where Ohio is more locally board-driven, I'm hearing that they're going to leave it up to the board, so.
Anybody else have any questions before we conclude on this topic?
I just had
Go ahead, Blake.
Lindy, why Mondays and not Wednesdays off, to give a little bit more time to clean and sanitize? What was the rationale behind that?
If we're going to school 4 days a week instead of 5, once the janitors clean Friday night, the building's clean. So we won't need janitors in the building on Monday. We will probably shift janitors to 4 10-hour days. And they're going to have longer periods in the evenings for that cleaning. Mondays, we feel like that's the best day and the freshest day for teachers to come in here and get the week laid out and everything planned for the next 4 days.
Anything else, Blake?
I was just wondering what the thought process was behind that, with the, if you had that extra time to sanitize, as well as teachers could essentially use that time to see what did work or didn't work moving forward for the other half coming in. Might be nice to have 2 days over the weekend to prep things, and a day in between for the teachers wise, as well as for the custodial staff, to have a little extra time than Wednesday nights to prep for Thursday new group coming in. That was just my thought.
And Blake, I think we'll leave that to the administration. Is that fair?
Yep, just looking for the rationale.
Okay.
Jay, one item I do want to bring up, and we'll have to address this in July, and we'll have to ask for public participation. But we have our school calendar set for next year.
Okay.
But what I feel I am going to come to you in July and say we need to amend that calendar, depending on what the guidance is from the governor. We only have 2 days for teachers to prepare for the school year for fall. What I would like to do is move the, students are slated to come back Tuesday, August 17th. I'd like to bump that to Thursday. Let's see, first day of August 18th, Tuesday, is the first day of school for students. My intentions are, based on the guidance we get, we bump students starting to Thursday, the 20th. That would give my teachers 2 additional days to plan, prepare and understand the new guidance of opening the school. So they'll have a total of 4 days working in the building before the students start coming in.
Is there any other changes you foresee, or is it just those two?
I don't. I think
Okay.
that is it. And I think a lot of districts are looking at that. We didn't plan to have a lot of professional development in August. Sometimes we move it throughout the year. But given that we are in COVID, we will need that time for sure.
Okay. Blake, Josh, anything before we move on?
There is one other thing I wanted to point out. As Lindy was talking a little bit earlier, she mentioned that it's not just been our district that's had difficulties and been difficult on the families. It's been everywhere. But that triggered something in my mind that one word by its absence stuck out to me during this discussion, and one word by its inclusion stuck out to me. So first of all, the one that wasn't used at all, that I think is something parents would like to hear if they didn't catch it, the 4-letter word packet was not used. That's not the primary plan. It's always a possibility, but that's not the primary plan. We heard plenty of it. All of us heard plenty of it in the spring. So that's a good thing. That 4-letter word wasn't used during the presentation. The 6-letter word or 7-letter word that was used, that as a parent, after going through 3 packets in the spring, as a parent, the one thing that I heard that Lindy had explained to me off to the side was blended. The blended learning model, it does include our teachers. So one of the things that at least I heard the most often from parents was that there was so little interaction just because packets are paper and it's not online, things like that. It was difficult to have that personal connection for the kids with their teachers. The blended model that's I think it's fair to call the primary plan, but it's certainly the goal to get to. That does include our actual teachers. It was mentioned that Mark's putting cameras into the different classrooms, so our kids will actually get to see their teachers and have that direct interaction. I'm not sure we keyed on that at all. I think it's worthwhile mentioning again for the sake of the parents that are watching on YouTube or there in the room. That's at least from my perspective as a parent, that was a big deal to not hear that 4-letter word, but to hear blended show up.
I agree. And I think through this pandemic, it's pushed a lot of districts into the digital age, and it's time to move towards the digital age. And I agree, that connection with the teachers, you cannot replace that. The students need that.
And that's why I hope we get back to 5 days.
Yeah.
That we can talk about the Chromebooks and everything else. But we've got a population out there that needs positive input.
Absolutely.
The most they get is at school, and they don't have internet access. And whether they can even get to where a bus provides it is questionable.
Yes.
So I think our most vulnerable are going to suffer the most if we don't get back in 5 days. And we're not going to control that, I understand that, but I think we're going to have the possibility of more people falling through the cracks than we've ever had,
Sure, absolutely.
and that's scary.
Okay, anything else? All right, moving on to item 5 of the agenda, and following with the new recommended agenda from the Ohio School Board Association. Now is the time for public participation on agenda items. So if there's anyone here that has something to say about an agenda item, now would be the time to speak up, please. Hearing nothing, we will move on. Starting with treasurer's recommendations. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the May 5th, 2020 regular meeting.
So move.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Edis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Item B, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the month ending May 31st, 2020.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Item C, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the following transfers. And again, these are our monthly routine transfers from the school-wide pool.
With the addition of some routine yearly transfers for the food service account also. and
Okay,
athletic.
thank you for that clarification.
So move.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Okay, item D, it's recommended that the Board of Education accept the following donations. We have $1,000 from Athens County Food Pantry, $500 from, help me with the name,
Tulojeski.
Joe Tulojeski. Thank you, Fred. And $4,108 from the Spartan Athletic Club.
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Okay, item E, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the enclosed final revised annual appropriations for fiscal year 2020 and certify to the county auditor.
And those,
That was it, okay.
And this is normal, we do this every year. We have to update our appropriations based on changes in our, the income. So like the additional grants that we got throughout the year, plus the CARES Act money, we have to adjust our appropriations in order for us to expend those funds, or open up purchase orders.
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Okay, item F, under Treasurer's recommendations, is recommended that the Board of Education approve the enclosed temporary appropriation resolution for fiscal year 2021 and certify to the county auditor.
And we are required by law to adopt appropriations by July 1 for the next fiscal year. The law allows us to adopt temporary appropriations if we're not ready to adopt the permanent appropriations. So we are adopting temporary appropriations at 25% of last year's appropriations at each fund level until we get some more information over the next few weeks.
So move.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to Superintendent's recommendations. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the resolution regarding career technical curriculum for 7th and 8th grade students for the 2020-2021 school year.
When we do this, we can offer career tech for 7th and 8th grade, but we only offer it for 8th grade because we do not have enough teachers to offer it clear down to the 7th grade. So if you're not offering it for 7th grade, then you have to file the resolution with the Ohio Department of Education.
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the donation of $1,233.29 to the Timothy House as raised through the Elementary Change for a Change fundraiser.
That's a lot of words, but I make a motion.
Awesome.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Udis?
Yes.
And Mr. Regan?
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the technology upgrade for the one-to-one devices for grades K-12 to enhance learning and academics for on-campus, distance, and blended learning. This will be funded by the CARES Act.
So move.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes?
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the enclosed letter of resignation from Hannah Charbel, effective the end of 2019-2020 school year.
Moved regretfully.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the memorandum of understanding with the Alexander Local Education Association regarding the 2019-2020 spring supplementals.
So they're still asking for 50%?
That is what we agreed upon, is 50% in the negotiated contract. We normally would pay 100%. We've spoken with districts throughout our area of what they were going to pay during this time. Majority of the districts, well, most of them are paying 100% or 50%. Athens City is paying 100%. The other three districts, Federal Hocking, Trimble, Nelsonville, York, are at 50%, and we agreed that 50% would be, it saves the district half of the money. Most of those coaches already put in time in scheduling at variations, so that's what we've agreed upon.
Even though it was all practice and no games. So
Yes.
it was more like maybe 20 or 30% of the work done.
Correct. It could be 20, 30, 40%. But as a negotiating committee and speaking with their presidents, that's what we agreed upon.
And I think, Lucy, that, I mean, part of this is, it's not a black and white from, they lost their season. I mean, they did lose their season, but the coaches, they do spend a little bit more time on the off-season doing work related to
And some of
their
them are out there
coaching.
now coaching. You know, Larry Bean is out there with his boys now that we've opened up some. OEA would tell you we need to pay 100% because that's what's in the negotiated contract. So, to save the district money and to work with our union presidents at a compromise was beneficial for both ends. Looking at the fall, we've already talked. They're out there practicing. They're starting to work out in condition. What are we going to do in the fall? And we had a very good discussion that we need to come up with a contingency plan. If the games are canceled, are we just going to cut the season, tell the kids to go home? Or are we going to say the contingency plan is the coaches are still going to meet with the kids. They're still going to run them through practices and trainings and drills and scrimmages as much as they can and pay the full percent. My thoughts are, I'd rather have the kids busy on campus doing something constructive than sitting home again. And the teachers' union was very supportive of that. Yes, let's come up with a contingency plan. Let's not close the season. If they're allowed to still practice and gain skills and agility training, let's do that.
I don't have a problem with the compromise. I think these people made a commitment. They signed a contract. It's not their fault that they didn't have a season, nor is it our fault that they didn't, but split it down the middle's, to me, fair. I don't have a problem with it.
The other issue, just to keep in mind, is this has not been challenged from a legal perspective yet. There's no guarantee that if this were to be challenged and go to a grievance and arbitration situation, that we would not be forced to pay 100%. That's why the legal recommendation has been, if you can work something out mutually between you and the unions, that's in everyone's best interest. So that's what the majority of districts are trying to do.
And if we go to arbitration, you may have to pay 100% of the supplementals plus the legal fees. And you're looking at $6,000 to $8,000 in legal fees.
I'm ready to vote.
You
I make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
There's so many moving parts. That's what's so, everything you think about. If you move this piece of the puzzle, there's three more, you know.
Do I
I
have a
made the
second?
motion.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Okay, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution regarding employee compensation related to COVID-19 building closures. And I'll just have Lindy give a brief explanation of what this is.
This is to be within compliance of the law with COVID and paying our state employees. This is a resolution that has to be adopted and then keeps the payroll department in compliance, so.
Yeah, and basically, we had talked about this a few times, about how the Ohio Revised Code addresses employee contracts for public school employees. When school is canceled or closed due to a pandemic, you are still obligated to pay your employees if they are still employed, which all of our employees remained employed the entire time. They were working modified schedules, doing modified duties, but they remained employed, and as long as they remain employed, you are obligated to pay them for their full contract. The reason that we have a resolution to pass is because the state auditor's office, they told us in a meeting that they just wanted us, as a best practice for every district, to pass a resolution showing that their board is understanding why we're doing what we're doing, and everybody is aware of what's going on. So, and all this applies to is the contracts for the 1920 school year. It has no impact on the 2021 school year.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes?
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education employ and compensate the following for the 2019-2020 school year for the Ohio Schools That Work grant-funded program. Unless someone wants me to read them off, I'm not going to read them off. It's on the agenda. But it's grant funding, and these 10 individuals roughly are due that compensation.
Yes, and these are our building team leaders. It's paid through the grant. We've done high schools that work for many years. It's a very good program, and it really helps set the focus of the district yearly.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Did you?
Blake moved.
Yes.
Blake moved. Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
All right, it is recommended that the Board of Education non-renew the following 2019-2020 school year supplemental contracts, and there is a long list of them. So Lindy, just please give a brief explanation.
Okay, and we can add Dina McKinley and Rhonda Wallace. All these listed are not teachers. They're community members and other employees that are taking on supplemental positions. To make it transparent and clear, the contracts that they work upon are one-year contracts. So that no one is confused and thinks they still have another contract coming, we non-renew them, and then the ones that are coming back, we hire them.
Yes, so this has nothing to do with their performance. This is just recommendation from our legal advisors that we do it this way. So just because you see someone's name or your favorite person on here as non-renewal, don't get excited. We're going to turn right around and probably renew a
Renew it
lot of
every
them right
year.
back, yes.
So moved.
Second,
Mr. Barnes,
yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education employ the following supplementals for the 2019-2020 school year pending their meeting all state and local requirements. So for non-certified, we have Nicole Hudnall, JV softball, certified Sheila Collins, summer school.
Moved.
Second,
Mr. Barnes,
yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education employ the following for the June 2020 feeding program at a rate of $14.50 per hour. And these are all individuals that are working on our
Payroll.
prior voted upon June feeding of the children.
Yes,
This is just the paperwork catching up.
yes. We're employing them for the summer at $14.50 an hour to distribute the food and prepare food for June feeding program.
Okay.
Now, when were you gonna discuss possibility of July now? or-
That's at the end.
It's, yeah,
So this is just approving June, Fred? Am I
Okay, I
right?
understand that. I
Yeah.
don't see it
Okay.
on here, so we're gonna discuss it.
Oh, it was added to
The
the other.
Oh,
abbreviated.
you're right. I'm sorry, I got that on my phone. I just got this.
Yeah,
I apologize.
I'll move it.
Second,
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education authorize the following support staff employment changes for the 2020-2021 school year. So we got Kelly Dowler, cook 2, 8 hours a day, Carolee Kiefer, a cook 2, 8 hours per day, and Celia,
Sal?
Cell,
Yeah.
Cell Reynolds,
Mhm.
cook 1, 8 hours per day.
So move.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education grant extended contract days to the following employees for the 2020-2021 school year. We talked about this last meeting, so we got Mr. Ford at 60 days and Ms. Van Winkle at 20 days.
I have a question. On down, we're looking at hiring Jenna Meeks.
Mhm.
So would Jenna be here instead of Brian? At what point do things change?
Things will change in July. When Brian resigns as teacher, then we will add the additional days to Mrs. Meeks.
So they'll figure out the.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
work on
breakdown.
that,
This will end up being prorated.
yeah.
Okay,
This will prorate out.
So, yeah, Mr. Ford will fill the FFA role for 1 month,
however they work
so
it out.
it'll be prorated.
Right.
Okay,
So
And then-
move.
thank you. Seconded.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
And for the record, I want to thank Mr. Ford and Mrs. Van Winkle for providing the board just the information that shows us all the extra work that you guys do that's related to this. I think everyone found it very helpful, so I want to make sure that I thank you for that. All right, now for some fun stuff. It's recommended that the Board of Education employ Brian Ford as junior high school assistant principal on a 3-year contract at step 0 on the salary schedule, effective to start for the 2020-21 school year.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yep.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
And I'd just like to add, Jay, personally, I am tickled to death to see Brian Ford as assistant principal.
Mr. Ford, would you like to stand up and say a few words?
For a speech or anything like that, just like I said, I appreciate the opportunity.
Come up in front of the camera,
There's
so.
a camera. It comes with the job.
You're on the carpet now.
I'd just like to say I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to filling in a new role and new challenges.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
And I think that what we lose, or what the VOAG people lose, from all I hear, you've got an old Alexander girl coming back. And with the support of Mr. Ford there, the mentor, Jenna Meeks, we're very proud to have you back too. At least you can get back into your black and red and get rid of that purple.
Congratulations, Mr. Ford. It's recommended that the Board of Education employ Lee Raines as junior high school principal on a 3-year contract at step 12 on the salary schedule effective to the start of the 2020-2021 school year.
So move.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
And I'd like to say for Lee Raines, I remember when he was 9 years old throwing a baseball.
Mr.
And-
Raines, would you like to approach the board? Put you on the hot seat right away.
I'm very humbled to get a chance to be the principal at my alma mater, where I live and where I've sent 3 children to school, where my mom retired from. And so I'm very committed to Alexander. It's going to be a very challenging year. I couldn't have a better right-hand man in Brian Ford to go forward. I feel very supported by Mrs. Douglas and Megan Carr, who are very instrumental in what we do here, and a staff that I've worked with many of as a teacher, side by side, and as an administrator with them over the years, and I look forward to a role in following the man and Dr. Dowden and his much-deserved retirement. So I just hope I can keep the boat afloat, and with all your support and guidance, looking forward to a different year, but nonetheless, excited about it. So, thanks for the opportunity.
Good. Thank you.
Congratulations, Lee.
Can I get a do-over on my speech?
Moving on, it is recommended that the Board of Education employ the following supplementals for the 2020-2021 school year, pending their meeting all state and local requirements. Same thing, I'm not going to read it unless someone insists.
So move.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
All right, coming up for our next speech, it's recommended that the Board of Education employ Jenna Meeks as the VOAG teacher for the 2020-2021 school year, pending her meeting all state and local requirements.
So move.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Speech.
You're gonna put me on the side.
Yes, it is.
My name is Jenna Meeks, for those who do not know me. I graduated from Alexander, so I'm very excited to come back here. Had 3 years taught in West Virginia and then 8 years at Southern and Meigs County. So I'm excited, always have an open door. I welcome you all to come in and excited to be back home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome home. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the settlement agreement with State Farm Mutual Automobile Insurance.
Moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
It is this is the first reading, my apologies. First reading, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the following policies for inclusion in the Policies and Procedures Manual. And they basically have to do with OTES evaluations.
Yes.
So teacher evaluations, professional staff. So we have a first reading, that's in the policy, or in the board minutes. If anybody wants to read those, they can, but we're having a first reading. So no action, right, Aaron?
No.
Okay. We have a recommendation from Coach Dean and Mr. Raines recommending that the Board of Education employ Michael Douglas as an assistant varsity football coach
Are you skipping S&T?
But
Okay.
Oh, I don't have the, I
Oh,
don't
you
have the
did the
amended
updated
one either. I must
Got
have
it
not
listed.
printed it off. My apologies. Yeah, I am
Thank you.
skipping them. Hold that thought. All right, it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the waiver of liability for participants and waiver of liability for community use of school facilities and equipment in relation to COVID-19. So this is approving all the waivers that we kept referring to
Yeah.
when Mr. Jeffers gave his presentation. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Is Mr. Congrove in the audience?
I do,
No, Caleb is not here.
Okay.
I could speak for him in a minute if I could.
Okay, that's fine. You want to do it after the vote?
I can do it whenever you want me to.
Well, let's vote on it, and then you can give your speech. Your surrogate speech.
Yeah.
All right, it's recommended that the Board of Education employ Caleb Congrove as the Spanish teacher for the 2020-2021 school year, pending his meeting all state and local requirements.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Speech.
I just wanted to say, Caleb is a 94 graduate of Alexander. He spent his last 10 years working in Cambridge. He got his master's degree from Yale University. The Marshfield resident, offered to be here tonight. A lot of things going on with him moving and some things like that. Told him we would be online, so I know he's watching. Very interesting character. I encourage, we lost a very good one, Hannah Charbel. I think we got an equally competent Spanish teacher. Very excited about him coming back and bringing some of the diversity that he has experienced in his lifetime and bringing that back home. So very, very excited for you, Caleb, and we'll see you soon.
I'm going to keep this a second,
That's
Lisa.
fine. All yours.
Thank you, Lee. All right, now that I have the correct agenda in front of me, getting back to what I mentioned before, we have a recommendation from Coach Dean and Mr. Raines. It's recommended that the Board of Education employ Michael Douglas as the assistant varsity football coach, pending his meeting all state and local requirements. We are going into executive session shortly for another reason, but we are going to also move this down and discuss it briefly in executive session. We will come out and vote on it after executive session. So for right now, I'm going to delay this until we come out of executive session. And that was all for the regular agenda items. We have business initiated by board members. And this has to do with our proposal. We're doing the June feeding now. That's already been approved. Now we're going to discuss July. And if we want to continue serving students meals during the month of July.
this probably should have went under topics of the superintendent. And topics of the superintendent, sometime this summer, we'll be looking at our track. But the summer feeding program that we have in place will end June 30th. We do have the option to expand it through July and feed students through the month of July, 3 days a week, 6 meals a week going out. We are averaging between 4,500 to 6,000 meals going out per week. Staff has asked if we could continue the program. We do have enough staff to continue the program through July. We have 6 staff members that will be employed through Kids on Campus and AmeriCorps that would like the opportunity to continue working throughout the summer here. There will not be any cost to the district to continue the program. We are reimbursed 100% through Department of Education. It's up to the board. Staffing, it'll be a little nip-tuck, but I think we've got it covered. Our truant officer, Larry Sisson, said, hey, he is game. Whatever needs covered that isn't covered, he will be here to help us. So I wanted to bring this up to the board's attention. It came to me late. I had a meeting Tuesday. Aaron Sherman and I sat down with some of the key players and Dan Phillips, just making sure we had enough bus drivers that were willing to give up another month. So we had that meeting Tuesday, and we all feel we can cover it, but it's a board decision.
The need hasn't gone away, has it?
The need is still there, yes.
I think, I don't have a problem at all with it.
And Aaron, we are getting full, 100% refund?
Yeah, we will
or-
actually, we will, just like in June, we will actually make money. Because the reimbursement is greater than the expenses.
Okay.
I think some of us are a little stressed because we know we've got this big project coming, reopening schools, but we also know what's best for our community at this time is to continue feeding kids. So we're willing to work through the summer to get that done.
And it's 2 meals a day, 2 days at a time, so, okay.
Yeah.
Just like before, okay.
Yes.
I think they're doing 2 meals 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They bring out 2 meals each day, so they provide 6 for every week.
Yeah,
6
6
meals
meals
for
a
every
week. Yeah.
So it'd be
6
12
lunches and
meals a
6
week.
breakfasts, yeah.
12 meals,
Yep.
actually.
Yeah, right.
I'm
Blake,
ready to vote.
Josh, you guys have any comments?
When everybody's ready, I'm ready to move on that. I think it's a great opportunity for us to continue to provide assistance as well as much needed help.
Is that a motion then, Blake?
I'll make it.
Is that yes, Blake? I'm giving you the opportunity.
You're on TV.
I'll motion and vote yes, but it's not my turn yet.
Blake makes the motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes,
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
And just for clarification, I don't think there's any action necessary, but the employees that are directly employed by the district to help with this program, not the ones who are employed by OU or Kids on Campus, they will just continue to work and be paid at the same hourly rate for the hours that they put in, so.
Okay. Do we have any other business initiated by board members? Do we have any board reports?
I'd just like to say Friday is my 49th wedding anniversary.
Sorry, Mary.
Mary's going to Myrtle Beach with her cousins for a cousin's getaway Friday night. I'm gonna be.
And you're staying home,
I'm
Bachelor,
at the
huh?
farm.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody's got to mow, feed the dog.
Fred, you lost my train of thought now. Public participation. This is the opportunity for questions that are not on the agenda, related to the agenda. So do we have any, Megan, do we have any questions from the audience, from online, public? I have one hand from Karen, please. Go ahead.
I just have a question because my board is gonna wanna know why. The donation that we made to the school district that we made in the spring being accepted at this point, what was the delay? Because my board will want to know, because we approved that in April and sent that out. So
Yeah,
could you
our donations are always accepted after the fact,
Okay.
so.
Right.
There always a lag between when we actually receive them to when
Well, I knew it
the
was
board
positive
actually
because,
approved
like I
them.
said, my treasurer has not called
I was
me.
gonna say, do we cash the check?
Alexander person. So
Yeah.
I'm
Just-
just curious.
and thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Karen.
much, yes.
You sat through all of that just to ask that question?
No,
Okay. Okay.
we were here for that one.
I kind of figured, considering David has his FFA shirt on.
I guess she's
Yeah.
not so young anymore, but you're still young to me.
Okay. Anything, Megan? Okay. All right, executive session. We're going to have a motion to go into executive session for preparing for, conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees and and employment and compensation of an employee.
make that, do I have to make a motion?
Yeah, we have to have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Quickly, before we lose everybody, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be July 15th, 7 o'clock here. Is that date good with everyone? I like the fact that the third Wednesday actually falls so early on the 15th, that once we get this guidance, we'll have 2 weeks to digest it, and I think it's kind of good that we can have that 15th date. Anybody have any conflicts, Blake, Josh? Nope, okay. All right, we voted, we're gonna go into executive session. When we come out, we're only gonna discuss, or do the last two, or the last item that we pushed to the executive session, and we're gonna wrap up the meeting. You are welcome to stay if you like.
And the Zoom, how do we do
How are
it?
we gonna do that in executive session?
Karen,
All right, we will enter back into regular session. It is now 10:42. Going back to Coach Dean and Mr. Rain's recommendation, it is recommended that the Board of Education employ Michael Douglas as assistant varsity football coach pending his meeting all state and local requirements.
So moved.
I will second.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
So for the sake of prefacing my vote, I know I'm speaking largely to just the people in the room because there's probably nobody on YouTube left, but for the record, this group in recent history has had, or this board in recent history has had a few contentious, similar decisions to make around this same sort of topic. And the bar has been set at a potential conflict of interest as a disqualifying factor for even the most qualified candidates. That is the history, and for the sake of moving forward and evolving as a group, the right decision for the people that we are charged with taking care of, being the students, the right decision is to say yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Just a reminder, the next meeting is July 15th, 2020, and with nothing else, I'll have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes?
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Edis,
Yes.
and Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Go to bed,